Welcome in, Fantasy Playcallers.
Everybody.
What's up? How's it going, guys?
We are the Fantasy Playcallers here to regale you with another episode of awesomeness.
Absolutely.
Find out if I have the Midas touch on running backs for 2 weeks in a row, because the two players I talked about last week, we're going to be talking about them again this week because they blew up.
They had some great performances out there.
They did. We've got some great waiver wire pickups so that way you can win fantasy championships coming up here today as well.
Absolutely.
Eli with some sneaky picks as he is in the running in quite a few leagues here as well. So congratulations on
we'll
that.
go through some injury news that really hit me hard, but I'm still in the running, so that's all I got to be.
You're in the playoffs. You had some injuries just occur. We'll talk about. As a matter of fact, let's just segue into that if that's right. We can lead off the injury report. Eli, the injury that hurts you the most this week. Tell our viewers.
So it just came out today. Jalen Hurts he had a shoulder injury at the third quarter in the game, and it seems like it's an AC joint injury, and so they're predicting that he's doubtful for this week, and maybe even next week. So that's both the semis and the championship game for those of us that ran through the regular season. Jalen Hurts are gonna try to scramble and find a replacement.
So you're saying that if you are trusting Jalen Hurts for your playoff hopes, this one really hurts.
This one crushes.
Yeah.
Crushes.
You should rename your team the Hurt Locker.
The Hurt Locker is a great team name.
It's a great team name.
Throwing it out there, but if you are a Jalen Hurts owner and you're in pain right now,
it hits too close
the
to
Hurt
home.
Locker.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is tough, especially when you have someone that explosive. Drafted as QB 12 somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there.
And then is currently QB 2.
Low teens, yeah.
Yeah. From depending on what your league scoring is, QB scoring can be
and I was
a little different. But
unless you were Eli and you knew exactly who to draft and how well he was going to do.
I was truthing them all throughout the preseason.
Yeah.
Rode them the whole way, but now...
So you're saying if people were listening to the Fantasy Playcallers in the offseason, they would already have known about Jalen Hurts. So 100%. Tune in this offseason, and we'll tell you about those great guys like Jalen Hurts that hopefully will not get hurt in the playoffs for you next year. But lots of injuries, actually. Jalen Hurts is not alone. There's a lot of big names on the injury report, which is really a bummer considering we're going into fantasy playoff time. But it's just the reality of the NFL and the reality of the situation. Kyler Murray out for the season with the torn ACL.
Real quick, just to clarify, when we say out for the season, we just mean out for the fantasy season.
Yes.
Yes, I know that's mildly irrelevant, but
yes,
real season versus fantasy season.
So if you're a Cardinals fan, don't worry about us saying it's out for the season for Kyler Murray, except for the fact that he will actually be out for the whole season as well. But that wasn't what we were talking about.
But there are some other ones who fit that modifier, so we just need to make sure we get that clarification out there early.
No, it's true. When we say out for the year, like Jonathan Taylor was a good example. Out for the fantasy year with a high ankle sprain.
No, they're shutting him down for the whole year. He's going on IR, yeah.
Oh,
he is.
I did not know that.
He's also out for the year. Out for the year.
I thought he was only out for 2 weeks.
No, it just came out today.
Okay.
Yeah. Once Dakota and I heard that he was out for the rest of the fantasy season, we're like, irrelevant.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Well, also the Colts aren't not making the playoffs, so I guess that does make sense.
Especially not.
That's a huge impact for fantasy. Wise. First off, the fact that he went out during the middle of the game, which if you start Jonathan Taylor, you are not surviving this. You're not playing this week. We'll just say that.
Yes. No, that's very well the case.
That's a crusher.
Deion Jackson, definitely someone to look out for, but we'll kind of talk about that in a second.
Without getting into the waiver wires, we have, in the vein of Kyler Murray, we have Colt McCoy, who's questionable for next week with a concussion. He's still doubtful whether he'll clear that protocol. So doubtful that they actually signed a third-stringer practice quarterback to the roster. So
they're planning on starting the backups backup, and then they have the backups backup waiting in case the backups backup gets injured.
Their season can't get any worse.
Hard Knocks curse? I don't know. Is that a thing?
I think there's some other things going on.
To wrap it into fantasy, though, if you have DeAndre Hopkins, you got to be a little skeptical going on. I mean, obviously you can play with bad quarterbacks, but that's going to lower your expectations if you got the third-string quarterback in there.
Yeah, and in my opinion, as far as wide receivers there, it hurts Hopkins for sure, but I think
really
even Brown is almost unstartable if Colt McCoy is not playing.
Yep.
Which is really tough because he's had some good games this season. Been out for a lot of it,
and stuff in the past.
But there's a very clear tier of quarterback that's going on there where it's going to downgrade your fantasy relevant players.
Yeah. So Colt McCoy in real quick. Do you think Brown is startable or starting?
Colt McCoy is just enough serviceable as he's a good solid backup that he can support Hopkins to a certain extent, and then Hollywood you can play as a flex. Like you're not expecting a lot out of him, but you can get some good flex value out of him.
I could not
with
agree
Colt
more.
McCoy, but with I don't know who played last week after he went out, like Kyle.
Trace McSorley.
Was it McSorley? He looked terrible.
Oh, he looked so bad.
So bad. So
it was rough.
If he plays again, evacuate if you can.
Yeah, if he plays again, you don't want to be starting an Arizona Cardinal if you can help it. If you have DeAndre Hopkins, obviously.
If you do start, don't watch the game. If you have DeAndre Hopkins.
I think if you have DeAndre Hopkins, I think you have to start him with all the injuries that are going out on there. I mean, Rondo Moore is on the IR, like all this.
But if you have, maybe if you got like another option that might be, I'm obviously not going to be DeAndre Hopkins, but let's real quick sit him, start him. DeAndre Hopkins,
Christian Kirk, comparable somebody
versus Christian Kirk. Yeah,
obviously I would start Christian Kirk.
Yeah. With Colt McCoy, I'd start Hopkins. Without Colt McCoy, I would start Kirk.
I'd start Christian Kirk.
Yeah. Okay. No, absolutely. All right. This should tell you about where we're at. I don't know. Yep. Christian Kirk is the ultimate measuring tool, apparently. But
well, he's the guy who nobody thought was going to do anything, and then he ended up being top 10 wide receiver this year. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the year recap in a week or two.
Yes, coming up soon.
Going back to the injuries, we do have a decent bit of them. We have Dameon Pierce. He's out for the year. He has a high ankle sprain. He's going to miss the rest of the playoff for fantasy.
Yeah, but once again, Texans weren't doing much anyway.
No. But he is still fantasy relevant. Like he was a border RB2 to borderline RB1, so it's a big impact for fantasy guys.
Especially considering where you probably got him. Yep. No, absolutely, it's huge. So, be looking over there. And who is you have Rex Burkhead, and then who's the other backup for Houston?
It's
Royce Peterman got mixed in. He got picked on. He was literally alerted the practice squad right before the game, and then
they used to have Marlon Mack, but he's not.
No, they have Iguala or.
The guy whose name we
starts
can't
with
say.
H. I can't pronounce.
It's the rookie running back.
All right. Well, we're gonna find out for you guys.
Eli will find out. Continuing with the IR, we have Russell Wilson, not the IR, but the injury report. We have Russell Wilson, who's questionable this week. He's got a concussion also. Unknown if he will play next week. I don't anticipate it with how the calls for the concussion have been.
And the Broncos really, quite frankly, don't have a lot to play for either. So
Pride.
Yeah.
What little you have.
I don't know.
Ubengawale. I'm not probably saying that right, but it's Dare Ubengawale. Is that how you probably say that?
Sure.
So he's the other Houston
Ogunbowale.
Ogunbowale.
Well, he had a pretty good week 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, where he had that touchdown where he kind of sprung out of nowhere.
Royce got a lot of the work, but he's been mixed in a little bit as well.
Yeah. So. Another Broncos issue, Courtland Sutton. Unknown level of injury. He just didn't practice and then he didn't play. So I don't know if you guys have any additional information that I don't necessarily have, but Courtland Sutton, that's an unknown. Keep an eye on him if he's on your fantasy roster, especially if you're in the playoffs.
He's got one of those legendary hamstring injuries, so it could be very quick to be perfectly fine, and it could be very quick to linger for 6 weeks. And
I would avoid starting him at all costs, anyways, especially the hamstring coming into your semis. Like, there's no reason to start.
There's also,
if you need to start Courtland Sutton, you probably are not in a good spot.
Look for a better option.
Yes,
you have some waiver wire pickups that I would genuinely start over Courtland Sutton for sure.
Another kind of guy who might be fantasy relevant for some people, but Chase Claypool, he's questionable this week. He's got a knee injury that he's dealing with. They said that it's unlikely that it's season ending. They don't know. It might just be a 1 week. So that's a tentative play-by-play. If he's in your flex spot, which is typically where I would put Chase Claypool this season as a low-end flex, maybe listen to the waiver wire pickups too.
Yeah, there's some people that probably might be starting all over here as well. So.
Exactly. Tyler Lockett, he's going to be out this week. He may come back for the finals, but he is possibly going to be having surgery, so there's a good chance that they might just say like, "Hey, we're not going to, we might not be in the hunt, we're not going to bring him back."
To add on that, they did come out or news article came out said that they're having surgery on the finger, but he has a chance to play the week after.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So this week.
So not this week. He's having the surgery. He's gonna be out this week. He could play next week. So
he's not gonna play this week. Does not help you this week.
I'm gonna tell you who's gonna help you this week, though. Don't worry, we'll get to that.
Yes, we will.
Another one, which Eli is. I don't know if you can see him. You can see the tears in his eyes, but he might be sobbing a little bit.
I already dealt with this experience last week watching Zach Wilson, and the stress it caused me aged me by at least 10 or 15 years watching him play football. And the fact that he just destroys fantasy value on good wide receivers just absolutely just grinds my gears.
Killing the running backs, too. They had Zonovan Knight, who had 3 really good weeks.
So Zonovan did go out, though, for the injury halfway through the games, but he did not.
But he didn't do anything. Yeah, he didn't do anything leading up to it. You got to think that might be in part Zach Wilson. Mike White out this week.
Yeah, rough.
He's shopping around for doctors. He's hoping that he's going to find a guy who's going to clear him. We're hoping that we find a guy who will clear him too.
I can print a certificate online and then just clear him.
I know a couple shady doctors. I got you, Mike. Give me a call.
On a serious note, if Joe Flacco some way somehow becomes the starter, do you feel better about Garrett Wilson, Elijah?
They already said that.
Yeah, but let's say Zach Wilson.
100%.
But realistic me, which doesn't happen very often, Robert Saleh has already came out and said it's Zach Wilson.
So it's Zach Wilson all the way.
And he didn't play terribly fantasy-wise last week.
No, he didn't.
He played okay.
That's the thing. He makes so many dumb plays and he makes one good play.
That's what he does.
And it's like a 50-yard bomb for a touchdown. Everybody's like, oh, look at Zach Wilson. No, he's terrible.
He's the second coming of Christ.
He's so bad.
Very inconsistent.
Yes.
For sure.
Staying in the vein of...
That's a nice way to put it.
He misses like super easy throws too. It's not like...
All right.
We can go on for a couple. We can make a whole other show about how much Eli hates him. Staying in the vein in quarterback injuries, we have Lamar Jackson, another questionable one. He's got a knee injury. We don't know if he's playing. This is pretty fantasy relevant because a lot of people have him as a starting quarterback. He's probably at least in every league taken. I would keep an eye out for him.
I would agree with that. I would think that he's been out for the last few weeks anyways, too, that they probably have somebody that they've been using, so they should have a backup ready. But if he does come back, would you feel comfortable starting him right off of this knee injury?
It depends on where I'm sitting. If I'm in the playoffs, and it also depends on who's on the waiver wire. If I'm in the playoffs and I have Lamar Jackson,
we'll talk about the other options. We know what some of the people that we recommended that are on the waiver wire, but
then we'll put that one back in our pocket for a little bit. Then we'll talk about later.
Mind if we go to QB? So let's do the Lamar Jackson game for sure. And then Deebo Samuel is out this week and probably out week 17 as well, which means that he is out for the season.
It's a big loss.
Yep.
Fantasy-wise,
they said 3 weeks last week.
Might be in for your championship if you do make
this show to be very, very important for George Kittle owners
actually
this last week as well. George Kittle had a really good game, a lot more targets going his way. I think it's going to be the same this next week too.
I highly agree. But
high quality targets coming from Brock
Purdy. Mr. Purdy.
Purdy. We'll talk about him later as well.
Caleb Huntley out for the year, Achilles injury. I would say that's a pretty sizable maybe impact with Dynasty because he is a guy who he's young. He's pretty decent when they give him actual snap time, and he's actually moving into free agency next year. So it is not a good thing to be entering free agency with an Achilles tear.
No, and the running back market in free agency is also notoriously rough at the moment. So
it's gonna be nuts. Next
year. When you look at like Damian Harris couldn't find anybody to trade for him, Kareem Hunt couldn't find anybody to trade for him. I don't think Caleb Huntley is signing a big deal. But he might be on a roster somewhere.
It's also going to get worse next year because you got to think of who's entering. We have
Josh Jacobs.
We have Josh Jacobs. We have Saquon Barkley.
It's a really good
two
class.
Big ones.
Yeah,
it's a great one.
It is.
So.
But I think more importantly, this injury we talked about this for Tyler Algier, and we'll talk about him here coming up as a suggestion. But this is important because there'll be some more value there that we'll get into. So.
And then one last hit, a little bit different than the other ones, but we have Khalil Herbert, who's going to be coming off of the IR, so that means he's going to be playable if you have him on your roster. Would you tell me if you think about...
No, he's not playable. I think this is just important to bring up for David Montgomery, who's getting all the work recently, so it should lower... When they're healthy, both on the field, it's a 60-40 split. It takes a lot of work from David Montgomery.
So
it's a big deal. It's a lot of time.
What would you say David Montgomery is pre-Khalil Herbert? Entering the game again versus maybe he was a low end RB2 or an RB2 definitely where do you think he ends up?
I think if he's just coming off the injury, I don't think he's going to be in his role right away. It'll probably be week 2. So I think right now David Montgomery's probably still the same as he was, but coming to the championship week, I think it changed your expectations a little bit.
Okay.
David Montgomery or Deion Jackson, who you starting?
David Montgomery, 100%.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So that'll kind of lead us in, though, to the free agent pickup of the week, I think. Yeah. I think we all are kind of in agreement, but Eli, you did snag him first.
So I put a caveat in here. I'm going to talk about 2 running backs, and this gets a little bit more complicated. It's not as clear-cut as it was before the trade deadline because they did trade for Zach Moss, and he got a lot of work, actually.
Kind of a weird trade for them, something that nobody's really expecting.
Yeah, it was almost a throw-in in addition when they traded Nyheim Hines away. But I only bring that up because obviously we talked about JT getting hurt. He's out for the year. So now you have an open backfield that I know it's not the greatest offense, but they do get a lot of passes, especially in this particular offense because Matt Ryan likes to check down a lot. And so that's why I do lean Deion Jackson is for the fact that he is really more that third down back than Zach Moss is. Yeah. And so I do think he's going to get a lot more work in that side, which is obviously really important. We talk about that all the time in fantasy. And then Chargers do give up the 6th most rushing yards in the league, so that's a great matchup coming up here. Yeah. And then obviously we talked about earlier in the year when JT was out for his other injury, week 5, week 6, Deion Jackson had some really great fantasy impact games. And one of those games he had to get, I think it was 10 catches actually. So super,
almost 35, 40 points in 1
week. And so it is concerned with Zach Moss and Deion Jackson. I think Zach Moss is still a good pickup as well because I think they're going to get split carries like they did. But I lean more towards Deion Jackson just for the fact that he'll be a little bit more involved in passing in. And I think the actual rushing will be close to half or 60-40, whatever the case is. So,
sure.
So I mean, just to throw this out there though, for Deion Jackson, I think it's a great pickup. Part of what makes it the pickup of the week is that their 2 opponents for the last 2 games of the fantasy season are notorious for giving up. It's the Chargers and then the Giants. Yep. They're both teams that are notorious for giving up a ton of rushing yards. Sure. So that's huge, absolutely huge for them.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, of that, you have the ferocious offensive line at times for Indy, although it's been a little inconsistent this year.
Yes.
Has been historically very good. And then, in my opinion, Deion Jackson does stand head over shoulders kind of on Zach Moss just because I get it, but Zach Moss would have to prove it that he can do it in this system where Deion Jackson already
Deion Jackson has already proved it.
I completely agree, but Zach Moss had 24 carries last week. So that's a lot of work, and Deion Jackson had significantly less. He had 13 carries, so you're going for 24 to 13. Again, Deion Jackson's more involved in the passing game. So what I'm saying, it's going to be a split. So you don't go in checking these guys up and knowing that you're going to have a full-on low RB1 or high-end RB2. You're probably getting that mid-range RB2.
So
good point.
If you're at the squeeze, let's talk the squeeze. Let's disseminate down. If you had to choose between one of them, you only have the ability to pick one. Who are you going to pick?
I still lean Deion Jackson.
Okay.
For sure.
What about you?
Yeah, still Deion Jackson.
Okay, cool. We're all in agreement on that one.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the Zach Moss thing is a good thing to be aware of. It's just,
he's actually projected more in Yahoo platform than Zach Moss is. But
yeah.
Sure. We will see. I think we're at least putting our stamp on Deion Jackson. We'll see.
Eli's been pretty right so far, so we'll ride that to the end as much as we can.
We'll ride. We've been right so far. So
yeah. You're being too kind. Going with I think Ethan's is, I would say, probably the second most important one this week. So I'd like you to go ahead and roll with that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So Tyler Algier is only owned in 37% of leagues. Mm-hmm. This is someone that if you were paying attention last week and were here, I told you to pick up last week because he was going to have opportunities. Now, obviously, I didn't predict the Caleb Huntley injury that really did.
Maybe you caused it.
I could have caused it. I could have it hurt or a blessing. I don't know. I don't know what that is.
I did see that ticket down to Atlanta. I did see that. And I saw the pipe in your suitcase. So
yes, like that. The Bulls had their pizza poisoned in Detroit one year.
Yeah,
anyway.
that was Ethan.
That was me. No, I wish Caleb Huntley all the best. But at the same time, Tyler Algier got a full workload, and quite frankly, looked better than he has had with half of a workload.
He really did look good.
And I do think a part of that is that he's kind of that big not big, but bigger bruiser back a little bit who likes to wear down defenses and kind of cause headaches and problems. And it turns out if you feed him the ball, good things can happen. Had over 100 yards rushing this last week. Caleb Huntley, as we mentioned, just had that terrible Achilles injury, which makes running backs out for over a year. So he's not in any threat to lose any of his share. This is Tyler Allgeier's job to lose right now.
Yeah.
And so definitely a big waiver wire pickup as well here.
Yep.
If he's available in your league, go grab him.
He's probably he's my number one pickup over Deion Jackson, actually.
Really?
I would say if he was available, yes.
Oh.
I would agree with that because the Cordell Patterson not necessarily making too many waves.
I remember those Deion Jackson 35 point 2 weeks in a row, and I can't get that out of my memory, so I still have him kind of up here. But
it is against the Chargers, and they have this high scoring offense, so it could turn into a passing clinic, making the Colts pass. But
sure,
I think they want to avoid that based off of the.
Allgeier has looked good. It's almost like he's been waiting to shine, and I think waiting to shine is, if we're ready for mine, I think that's a good one for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mine is a little harder than you guys, not necessarily as much weight, but I think if he's available, he's definitely worth it, and the other two are not. It's definitely worth a pickup, and that's James Cook. Showing about 48% of leagues he's taken in. The big thing that stands out for me is the fact that he's doing more than Devin Singletary with less, and he's getting less snaps, he's getting less attempts, but he's producing slightly more than Devin Singletary is, and I think it's going to really shine through in the next 2 weeks. I know Devin Singletary had that big run last year that really won a lot of people to playoffs, but he's kind of dropped down a little bit, and maybe it's because they're just metering it off, and it's hard to predict if Josh Allen is going to run, but James Cook looks good with less time.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that he's definitely got going for him. And if you're in a dynasty league and he's available, you should have him on your team already.
Yeah, James Cook has been very efficient, whether it's in the passing game or in the running game. He's done a very good job this year of just yards per carry in general and catching most of his targets for a decent amount of yards. So it's really, this one's all about opportunity for me. If he's given opportunities, good things will happen. He reminds me actually a lot of Tony Pollard.
That's the same kind of thought that I had, where it shows the talent is there, but he just doesn't get the time.
Yeah, and if he ends up like Tony Pollard, where he eventually gets some time, I think it's great. Especially in Dynasty, I think James Cook will come around.
Yeah, definitely.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. He's got the running back genes from Dalvin Cook. So,
Sure.
Can I? My other one is pretty lackluster. I think it's worth mentioning, and so if I can just throw it on there real quick.
For sure.
Jerick McKinnon, he's got 2 back-to-back 30-point weeks. The Chiefs' backfield is a mess. You don't really know who's playing more. You don't really know. They've said they want Pacheco to play more. Jerick McKinnon's beating him on points for fantasy. I think this is a very bold move. This is a move of desperation. But if you need somebody, let's say that Jonathan Taylor was on your team, and if we had Jonathan Taylor and Dameon Pierce on the same team, and you really need a running back, he might be the desperate guy who can get it done for you.
Well, I don't know. I mean, with the last few weeks that he's put up, honestly, I kind of feel like he's even taken over a little bit more than you're giving him credit for, if I'm being honest.
The problem is that they've said you never know what's going through Andy Reid's head.
Yeah.
He's always got some crazy crackpot plan going on, but they keep saying that Pacheco is their guy, but I'm just not quite seeing it, maybe.
Yeah, I wonder what the snap percentage is actually over next. I actually don't know.
35% for Pacheco.
Okay.
For McKinnon, it is... Sorry, I can't spell McKinnon.
You're right. 62% last week.
Oh, okay. So I'm wrong. So he is getting the higher snap count.
And this just started. The last 2 weeks it was 57 and 62, but those 2 weeks he's had 32 and 34 points.
This is what he's been getting.
So I mean, if he is available, in my opinion, I would pick him up and start him immediately.
He's just at that 50%. So he may be not owned in half of the leagues, kind of why I threw him on here.
Yeah.
It's a weird guy to pick up, though. You never thought that we were going to talk about Jerick McKinnon as being fantasy relevant this year, but, crazier things have happened.
Yeah, not at the beginning of the year, but the way things have been going, I for sure would be happy to have him in my lineup.
And
if I made it to the playoffs.
I think he's been a flex-worthy running back for the last 10 weeks almost. Probably last
a low end flex,
6 to 8.
Yeah.
He's super involved in the passing game, so
yes,
it is all PPR and it's game flow dependent a little bit. At least we thought it was. Going into this game, I was actually thinking about starting him and didn't because I thought that their blowout Houston. Well, it turned out Houston was able to take him in overtime, so it was a high-scoring game. So he was really involved, had 8 targets. And 70 yards and a touchdown in the receiving game. So that's where he makes most of his hay. So, PPR...
Yeah, still had 10 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown.
Which we haven't seen that up until this week. He had 6, 8, 6. It was still pretty low. So
for sure.
It just got bumped up here in the last game. So we'll see if that trend...
Yeah, and even before the 6-8-6 even was a bump up from before. It was 1, 3, 2, 2. So, don't get me wrong. We are seeing a much healthier dose of Jerick McKinnon than we were before. But
I still think if they get up, though, and they have a high lead, it'll be Pacheco.
Interesting.
Majority of it. He's not. That's their roles. And that's what they have to do.
You do it as a full committee. I actually
do.
I have to say I do disagree. I think that McKinnon has proven that he's going to be a little bit more of the guy no matter what.
Andy Reid wants to do the committee thing. I guarantee you.
No, we'll see.
So they both will have value for sure. I both think you could start them both.
Obviously, one is going to be more available than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And here's the other thing: is that Seattle, known for running that cover 3 defense, running backs in the flat is a great way to beat that cover 3 with those flood concepts. So
that's where he took a couple of his passes too, was just off the flat and took it for 40 yards and a touchdown. So that's where.
And I'm all out of everyone that we've talked about in the free agency, if Jerick McKinnon is available. I would be all in. I would
start him over the other
for sure.
Okay.
Yes, 100%. As a matter of fact, I would start him over Miles Sanders, who is blowing up a lot of people.
A little bit higher though. I think it must be Sleeper.
I'm showing 50.
Yeah. And Sleeper is 50, and Yahoo is 78. So it really depends.
A little different.
The platform, but yeah.
If he's available,
pick him up immediately. Yeah, he's probably he'd be the pick up of the week. In my opinion, over Dion and Algier.
We'll see. It might.
Yeah.
It might not be. We'll see.
Yeah, he does have a little bit of a risk to him for sure.
I think for me, the risk aversion is the big thing, especially if I'm in the playoffs. For me, it's more of if I'm picking up Jerick.
But that's true. But you also have the potential of getting a 33-point week. He's done twice in a row. So
if you're picking up someone off the waiver wire to get you 33 points in your flex slot or your running by 2 slot, you've pretty much won your fantasy league, which is pretty great. All right, so let's talk about yours. Your next one.
I talked about last week, so I will not spend a lot of time on him. We just talked about Jerick McKinnon, probably too long there. Chuba Hubbard, we talked about it last week. He's still involved in the passing game, and that's the most important thing we talked about with the Panthers. They didn't look that great, to be honest with you, but he had a 40-yard catch that really kind of added some value, and I think if you need somebody plug and play, he's going to get 40% of the work and be involved in the passing game. I think he's a good stash.
When he's receiving targets or he's receiving targets, he's consistently getting 3, which that's not bad.
No, for running back,
that's pretty solid.
And he usually does a pretty good job with it too, which also gets him some points and yards. No, Chuba is. I think that it's someone to me that in the playoffs you're kind of starting in a pinch.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. I would put all the other guys above him at the moment, with possibly the exception of James Cook. That would be close. Kind of right back.
I don't know that I would really start James Cook unless I was really, really needing somebody to fill that spot. I think I would probably have James Cook last, except for the guy that we're about to talk about, maybe even Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah, so speaking of this desperation, are you really wanting to win your fantasy championship with Flair? Are you behind in your projections by 20 points or more? Then I've got the player for you. Is he good? Maybe, right? But the last 2 weeks, Marlon Mack has absolutely blown up on very few opportunities. He's done a very great job. And we've seen his opportunities increase because he's done very well. with those opportunities.
Yep.
Now here's the thing. He's 6% owned. You can get him for nothing. I mean, 0.00000 waiver dollars. And if you're desperate for a running back, or if you just want to go out on a limb, Marlon Mack might just be your guy. Go grab him for virtually nothing. Throw $1 in or whatever. It's the end of the year. You can't keep your waiver wire budget with you. But grab him for nothing. The last 2 weeks, right? If we can put this in perspective. And we'll give you some stats here as soon as I can pull them up on my computer.
Without ruining your stats, I want to say two things. One, which I think is just a ha-ha, and the other one, which is my hesitation with Marlon Mack, and I think he's touchdown reliant. If he doesn't get a touchdown, he's not relevant.
Well, he had 30% of snaps in the last 2 games, okay?
Yeah.
32 and then 29. So he's hovering right at 30%, which is not great.
That's not good.
Right?
But he does have a touchdown in the last 2. He has 1 touchdown in each last game.
But in those games, he was 3 carries for 15 yards with 62 receiving yards off of 3 targets and a touchdown. Okay?
In the next
game,
week he had 4.
He had 4 targets, 4 catches, 26 yards, right? Which gives you a nice little floor. And then he ran the ball 5 times for 37 yards and a touchdown. And he broke a big play, getting 1/3 of the snaps in both these games. So you do expect that, although Latavius Murray played well, the passing down back for sure is Marlon Mack. And I think he's an interesting player, if nothing else. And if you're desperate, go grab him, because he's going to be available in all your leagues.
I just want to point this out because I think it's funny. If you look at his picture on his player bio, it looks like somebody took a black magic marker and just scribbled on his hair. Have you ever seen one of those little magnet doodles where you drag the little magnet dust?
Sure.
It looks like a kid drew his hair with a magnet.
That's it.
I know a good barber if you're looking for one. I think your pitch was great because I think that sums up exactly, if you have nothing to lose and you're really looking to win with some flair, I think Marlon Mack is a great choice. It's a very ballsy choice.
You better be wearing some
very ballsy
steel-plated underwear.
I don't know how you walk around with those things if you do it, but if you do it and you win,
I did say last week to
you.
pick him up, and then look at 15 points.
You did.
So, this week maybe?
Hopefully you have better options than everything we just talked about. But if you don't and desperate, there are some options at least out there for it.
So let's say maybe 4 out of the 5, maybe even
yeah, Marlon Mack's definitely the last person that I would start. Unless for real I was down 20 points in projections or something, I was very desperate. I might throw him in there in the flex just to see if he's going to break a couple runs and save my fantasy season.
So real quick to wrap up the running back portion, out of the 6 we have, rank them.
I would go
Jim McKinnon.
Okay.
Yes.
Deion Jackson,
okay.
And then probably Tyler Algier. Deion Jackson, Tyler Algier are pretty close. I actually might put Algier above Deion Jackson.
Okay.
And then probably Cook. If you need a play right now, I probably would do Hubbard, Mack, and then Cook.
Wow.
I
got the top and the bottom this week.
I know. I love Cook, but it just all the work. There's not a lot of work for the running backs in general, and then he's playing with Devin Singletary's kind of leading on.
His whole thing, and I did caveat this, is his whole thing is efficiency. Yeah. Ethan put the word very specific. He has to be efficient. For me, it's definitely ballsy. Jerick McKinnon is my number, or not Jerick McKinnon. Deion Jackson is actually my number 1. Okay. Tyler Algiers is my number 2. Jerick McKinnon is my number 3.
Avoiding the risk.
Hubbard, Cook, Marlon Mack.
Sure.
I'm very risk averse, especially when I'm in the playoffs. I am going to go with dudes who I think are going to get me some money.
Sure. Don't get mad at me, boys, but I'm going to be very selfish and high on my own guys here. But I'm going to go Jerick McKinnon, Deion Jackson, Tyler Algier, Marlon Mack, Chuba Hubbard, James Cook.
All right, it's easy. Hey, top and bottom for both of yours. I'm okay with it.
There's not a lot of other running backs above 55% or 50% we would like to talk about. We do every week. We talked about a few last week, so hopefully you picked them up. But Cam Akers is still at 66%, so check for him if he's out there available. And he had a pretty decent game.
Yeah.
He probably would be the 3rd running back I'd probably choose out of this list, the 3rd or 4th, if he was available. So
I would rank him above Tyler Algiers probably. if I had to.
Yeah, I'd probably put him at 2.
Yeah. So just check if he's out
Akers
there.
definitely up there. On those.
We already talked about this last week, but we won't go through the names. Pick up handcuffs if they're out there. If you have an extra spot on your bench,
don't let anybody else get them.
Nope.
That's the whole point.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving into the receivers. I think the receivers is a little bit more fun because we have some.
We actually have people that are relevant.
We have guys that are relevant.
Hey, those running backs are relevant.
Eli, as the resident fantasy champion,
Yes.
I'm going to let you go. I'm going to give.
I don't even know what that means.
I mean, you have the you have
most
the most
teams in the playoffs.
Games in the
for
playoffs.
Sure. So please,
It's definitely not me.
Yeah, I do. Okay.
I'm going to let you go ahead and do yours.
Yeah, it's 6 of the 7.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Don't rub it in.
6 of the 7.
So my first one I go with in Jahan Dotson. So he's 17% owned, rookie wide receiver. We talked about him, I believe, 2 weeks ago when he was first coming back.
Yes.
But he had he had a good game coming back right away. But this last week he did it again. So he had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 105 yards, and a touchdown. I don't know if you guys watched this game, but there's that 50-yard bomb in the middle of the field that he went up and over the top and just mossed somebody.
For how small he is, it is incredible.
Crazy.
How easily he mosses people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Scrappy.
Really
He
scrappy.
But
really good out there. And kudos to Taylor Heineke. He gave him a chance, and he went up and got it. So and Heineke's known to do that. Like, they give his wide receiver a chance to his own detriment. Like
for better or for worse, but
exactly.
Yes.
Better for fantasy, worse for his actual team. But I really wanted to highlight too, as he's coming back from that injury, that he had that good game, had the bye, and then he's had this really good game. Mm-hmm. His snaps jumped from 61% up to 79%, so he's really becoming an every snap starter almost there. So. Week 13 he had 9 targets as well. So last 2 games he's played, he's had 6 and 9 targets. He does have a tough matchup this week, but I really think he's a really good flex wide receiver if you need somebody to really give you kind of a boost and have that good touchdown potential with his ability to do those highlight catches. So
I think Jahan Dotson is finally doing what everybody kind of expected him to do, and that was move into the second wide receiver role. As opposed to kind of lingering behind Curtis Samuel. And the fact that you guys are calling attention to the fact that he mosses people with how small he is, I mean, that's why they drafted him. Yeah. They really liked him in the draft.
The only other wide receiver his size that I've seen do what he does to defensive backs, to be honest with you, is Tyreek Hill. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have the speed that Hill does, but his ball skills are really good.
They're real good.
That's why we talked about this 2 weeks ago when he came back. He had the 3 touchdowns at the beginning of the year. Or the first 2 games he had 3 touchdowns, and that was because his ability to go up and get the ball, especially in the end zone.
Yeah, elite catch radius, especially for a small body. Yeah, people forget that he was a first-round pick, guys. I mean, he was drafted before Christian Watson. He was drafted before George Pickens, and that was for good reason. I think this is a great pickup. Go get yourself some Jahan Dotson.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
What do you see?
Go ahead. Rock, paper, scissors. No, I'm just kidding. I have one that I talked about a little earlier in the year, and who's kind of starting to make an appearance, and that's Noah Brown for the Cowboys. I do want to go ahead and throw this out there and say, it's very dependent on kind of the whole situation on who they're playing. He's had 2 pretty good weeks in the last 2 weeks. For the last 3 weeks, he's had over 70% of snaps, which for a guy who's behind CeeDee Lamb and everybody else on the Cowboys, that's pretty decent. This week, the big thing for him was the targets. Previous week, he had 6. This week, he had 9, which is massive for a dude who's like the 3rd-string wide receiver on their team. He's a big body. He's 6'2", 225 pounds. And they're playing Philly next week, who they're going to be in the air a lot. And there's going to be a lot of passes being done. I think Noah Brown, for the fact that he's only owned in about 5% of leagues, is somebody who you don't really have to put that much in. And he has a pretty high payoff without really having to pay very much to get him.
Yeah, I think he's very matchup dependent, but he has a really good matchup this week against the Eagles. Well, it does. Decent. I think Minshew can still hold it as far as score points if it's him. It would have been a lot better if Hurts is what I'm
Yeah, we know.
I think everything would have been better if Jalen Hurts
if you could give your AC joint to Jalen Hurts, would
Zach
you do it?
Wilson and Jalen Hurts getting hurt. It's been a rough few weeks, guys.
The big thing though, I have to clarify on this one is his ability to get you points is going to depend on targets, and it's also going to depend on scoring. He had 2 touchdowns this week. He's a red zone threat, but the ability for them to get into the red zone is really going to make him a valuable asset. So it depends on how well they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, no kidding. And here's the thing: is that when you have these kind of offenses that have shown an ability to score pretty well, which the Cowboys have in the past, and have shown flashes of that this year, then I like to have guys on those teams whenever you can. So I like that.
I think yours is between yours and Eli's first one. I think your first one is probably one of the pickups of the week if he's available, just because of how wildly he's done for the past few weeks. I don't think it's really somebody that you can count out if they're still on the waiver wire.
Yeah, and who we're talking about here is Treylon Burks. Now, Treylon Burks obviously missed the last few weeks with that concussion that he had, where he got absolutely drilled. Which is unfortunate because he was doing really well before that. He had targets of 6, 8, and then 6 again. He was about 50% of snaps in all of those games. And then for the last 2, he had 111 yards and then 70 yards respectively until that game where he got hurt early on. So here's the thing, is that the Tennessee Titans really do need help at the wide receiver room. This is a guy who's averaged over 6 targets in his last 3 games that he was healthy. I fully expect him to come back in and then to immediately target him just like they were before again. So just based off of that alone, especially if you're in the playoffs and need someone to pick up and start right away, I think Treylon Burks is going to be a great.
Do we know if he's cleared?
We don't know, but it's been 2
however,
weeks and it's a concussion, so there's a good chance he will play this week. But you should watch the injury report.
So I think this is a great pick because I talked about him like 3 weeks ago before his concussion, and he had those big explosive games. But he's really had some really good deep balls. Actually, he's a deep ball threat with his big body going down the middle of the field. And how he got hurt was he got absolutely crushed by a defender coming over, catching a touchdown and knocking himself out, or knocking him out. So
he still got the touchdown, though.
He still got the touchdown. Held on to it, too.
What a commitment.
And he was out cold.
Put the body on the line.
So I really like this pickup. I obviously talked about it earlier in the year. We got to kind of check on the concussion side. But yeah, if he's available, I think he's a higher end flex with some good floor, which is really hard to find off of the.
Yeah, it is pretty rare that they go 3 weeks into concussion protocol.
Yeah, something's wrong.
There is another factor.
Okay.
And that is
Ryan
Tannehill
that's a good point.
may not play on Sunday, which we did not bring up in the injury report. This is something that we left off on accident.
That is a good point.
I just looked it up.
And Malik Willis does downgrade Treylon Burks quite a bit.
If Ryan Tannehill does not play, how does this affect your perception of Treylon Burks for the next 2 weeks? Because if Ryan Tannehill misses next week, it's very likely he'll miss the final week because it's an ankle injury.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say: if Ryan Tannehill is completely out for the next 2 weeks, pretty much everyone else on this list goes above Treylon Burks, unfortunately for me. But if Ryan Tannehill is healthy, Treylon Burks might be my top pickup this week.
I agree, and if Ryan Tannehill's not there, I am OUT on.
Because Malik Willis can't throw.
Not doing it. Well,
Malik Willis is essentially rookie Justin Fields, and we all saw how well his wide receivers did.
But he's rookie Justin Fields, but he doesn't run as well as he does. Yeah.
Get close to wide receiver. I've never seen Malik do that.
All right, he might be even worse than rookie Justin Fields. My point stands that you don't really want a lot of shares in the passing game for Tennessee.
I think they passed it was like the lowest pass attempts in a long time. The game he started on the Monday night. You know, remember that?
Yeah, it was when they played 10 Buffalo.
10 passes?
No, he had 4.
4 passes total. That's not a big pie. That's a small pie.
And when he did, and that was when he started in 30% of it. When he started 100%, you're right. It was 10.
I'm not gonna lie.
I
did kind of forget about the Ryan Tannehill injury when I put this one in because it was not on our report. But like I said, if Ryan Tannehill is in, all of the things I said before stand.
Yes.
If he's not in, ignore them completely.
That was a really good catch, Dakota. But yeah, I agree. I 100%. I think it's a really good pickup. And even if it's a good pickup, you got an extra bench spot, even if Tannehill's hurt, because maybe he'll come back.
He might come back for last week.
Yeah, you never know. So,
but I don't know.
My perception of this is if he's out this week because of the ankle injury, they're gonna rest him up for the actual playoffs, like the football playoffs. They say multiple times.
They're 7-7, are they not?
Yeah, but they're in the hunt.
That's what I mean. So.
Are they
going to make the actual playoffs if Tannehill doesn't play?
They were winning games. They got Derrick Henry. As long as Derrick Henry's healthy, they're going to ride that dude to the championship as far as they can get.
Offense with Malik Willis, who is very athletic.
He's super athletic.
Doesn't know how to throw the ball yet.
Yeah,
he's working on it.
Yeah.
He's working on it.
He'll figure it out.
I'll give him credit for that.
All you got to do is quarterback.
Speaking of injuries, with Tyler Lockett being out, my pickup is actually Marquise Goodwin. I really like Marquise Goodwin. I know Ethan does too. He runs like a 4.3 40.
Yeah, I mean this is one of the fastest players in NFL history.
Yep.
When he was younger, unfortunately, he's probably
Olympian.
Yeah, Olympian.
Yes, Olympian.
For the hurdles, I think.
Yes.
Probably a little slower now that he's getting up there in age, but still is going to be topping out speed charts. And
Didn't get as much playtime with the 49ers. Yeah. Kind of faded into obscurity with them. However, I personally believe that he is a clear wide receiver too if Tyler Lockett is not there. He's fast. He has the propensity to get open. When he gets a decent number of snaps, which he definitely will if Tyler Lockett is out, he performs. So if you have Tyler Lockett and you're really looking for a wide receiver, I think Marquise Goodwin is a great pickup if you can't get Treylon Burks or
Ryan Tannehill.
Or Ryan Tannehill, yeah. Can't get Treylon Burks or Jahan Dotson. I think Marquise Goodwin might be a good one. He's only owned in about 5% of leagues, so you can get him essentially for nothing unless somebody has the same idea as you do.
Yeah, and this is another big upside pickup as well. So this is somebody that, like, if I'm down in projections and want to start someone in my flex, it really gives me an opportunity to put up 30-plus points. I do think if Lockett is out and Goodwin is in, that there is a chance.
Lockett is out, and they've said that he's set to take over number 2. So he is the number 2 guy going into this week.
And there's a chance that Marquise Goodwin catches a couple of bombs here. Because that is what he's great at.
Yeah.
And so...
He had a really good sideline catch, actually, this last week, too, showing him a good toe tap. He's a good wide receiver, actually, even... in addition to his speed, and there'll be volume there for sure with this offense. So I think this is a great pickup.
Geno Smith's got to get that that quarterback passer rating back up.
Yep. Yes. Absolutely.
All right, we'll let you two close it out.
Because you got 2 left. So
I'll just mention the last one because I think we talked about it last week. It does.
Every week.
Yes, we do.
You talk about this last one.
He's every week.
Yeah. So I'll talk about Chris Moore. He had we actually talked about him last week, I believe, as well.
More.
We did talk about.
Are we going to talk about more?
I had
No, you had Nico.
Oh, okay.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, you had Nico, and then Nico was out.
And when I do more, because I did more.
That was a couple weeks ago. We did more, and more.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha.
So, anyways, we've talked about Moore quite a bit this season. And last week, this week he had a good week as well. He had, I believe, my goodness, I didn't have that up. He had about 9 points, still heavily involved. Number wide receiver, Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins have been injured for the majority of the last few weeks, so it's been really the Chris Moore show as a number one wide receiver. He had the big blow-up week last week, which he had the 13 targets. And really
11 targets.
11 targets for 10 catches and 124 yards. But this past week he still had 9 targets, 4 catches for 42 yards. So again, not very efficient, which is to be expected when you're starting playing with Jeff Driscoll and Long Neck. What's Long Neck?
Davis Mills,
yeah.
Daddy Long Neck.
Daddy Long Neck.
Yeah, Daddy Long Neck.
So, but the point is, if Brandon Cooks is out, if Nico Collins is out, which is actually both of those players leaning not playing again this week, it's definitely just strictly a volume play. And you're getting 8 to 9 to 10 targets. It's something you can play in
for
your
a
flex.
waiver wire pickup to throw into your flex slot. There's nothing safer than 9 or 10 targets in a game.
If Colin comes back, it all depends on Colin. I think Cook is definitely out. If Collins comes back, though, I would immediately switch this name to Nico Collins, who's been the better wide receiver.
So it depends on the injury. Yeah.
Completely, could not agree more. The Nico Collins dependency as well. But I'm with you on that. I've got kind of an interesting one for you guys here. I've got Demarcus Robinson. We've talked about him previously, and he's done a pretty decent job of kind of having that filler slot. But I really think this week in particular, so this is almost like a streaming option for the playoffs at wide receiver here for Demarcus Robinson. He's only owned in 14% of leagues. Okay, he's seeing good target volume, but this next week he expects to see good target volume again. Only this time he'll be playing the Atlanta Falcons, and we have said all year long, you want to start people who are playing the Atlanta Falcons because his defense is very bad. And so,
true facts.
There's a lot about them that's really bad, but we'll
isolate
it to
that. Just focus on the defense for now. We don't have a whole podcast dedicated to the faultities of the.
Yes, but he's averaged over 6 targets in his last 7 games, and he's been very consistent. It's been a very stable amount of targets going to Demarcus Robinson. It's something we've talked about before as well because of that. But if you want a solid flex starter that has pretty good upside, in my opinion, against a very bad defense, Demarcus Robinson is one of the best quick start and grabbing starts that you could have.
So. Agree. Yeah. I also think it's pretty evident that Devin Duvernay is just kind of like can't handle the role as wide receiver 1. It's just not something that he's capable of doing.
Yeah, for whatever reason, he really seems to be like the gadget player in that offense versus the more mainstay wide receivers, which he does a good job at, don't get me wrong, but he's talking about his fantasy upside a lot.
We talked about this, like, he's like a really good returner, really good gadget / deep ball guy. Like,
yes.
If he catches that deep ball, he's going to go off for a touchdown. DeMarcus is more that overall lengthy, tall, athletic receiver. I was looking at what we talked about last week. We talked about Dotson last week. We talked about Robinson last week, and we talked about Nico Collins / Quishmore last week. So, if you guys actually listened to us last week, you guys would have had some great pickups here. But you guys need to start putting those waiver.
Yeah, all 5 of you.
Come on, guys. My last one additional one I just wanted to throw out there, and then we'll talk about the ones that are over the 50%, which I think we should highlight because we mentioned him last week as well. Elijah Moore, I want to throw out there. I know it's Zach Wilson, but he's still heavily involved. He's really running as a wide receiver too. And Denzel Mims is hurt, and so is Corey Davis. So it does provide.
Corey Davis might be back this week.
That's true. Okay, so that might change things a little bit going forward because Corey Davis might go back to his ruin Elijah Moore.
We're kind of given. So this is playoffs, guys. So I'm gonna be honest with you. We're giving you a little bit more homework than usual. Okay, and here's the deal: is because there's
a lot of injuries.
We got you there. You have to get yourself the rest of the way.
No, because it's Monday night and there are injuries, and if those injuries really start to matter when it's like, is this person sitting or starting when the one game means a lot more during playoff time. Obviously, than it does during the regular season.
Well, it changes your whole.
Well, it does.
It changes the whole opportunities, like the percentages of snaps they get, the amount of routes they are able to run. Like that one player can change Elijah Moore going from an 80% snap player down to 60%. Yes.
And we're getting into the
just huge.
We're getting into the stretch of the season where people are tired.
Yeah.
Everybody's really tired, and there's a lot of injuries that are mounting up. And at this point, it's like, there's a lot of options, but there's almost so many that it's hard to give out specific ones. We kind of like took the cream of the crop of the options.
Yeah, if you don't want to check, waiver wire, Jahan Dotson, Demarcus Robinson, Marquise Goodwin, Noah Brown, these guys are all going to be good to go without checking the waiver wire.
I would agree.
But there are some good finds if you're willing to dig a little bit. If Ryan Tannehill's healthy, Treylon Burks is going to be great. If Nico Collins is out, Chris Moore is going to be great. And if Corey Davis is out, Elijah Moore is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these 3 do come with caveats.
They do.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so pay
Elijah
attention.
Moore, you attach yourself to Zach Wilson, which is nothing I don't want to do, but
when the volume is there, it doesn't.
And the talent, it's volume talent. It just you got to consider where the volume's coming from. It's coming from an inept, small child.
How many weeks have we talked about more than one player with the last name Moore?
I mean, we'll have to. And you know what? When in our recap, look for more. We're gonna call it Rob segment. More, or something like that, and then we'll do more.
We'll workshop the name, but I like more. I'm just curious. This is like there's too many guys named Moore.
So many.
Yeah.
So many.
For the 50%ers and above. Drake London's on there, obviously.
Yep. Drake London, who had a heck of a game if you don't count the very last play.
Which, I mean,
statistics
do, but that's fine.
Yeah.
We just close our eyes and pretend like we didn't do this game for the Falcons. I mean, it's never one player's fault, but sometimes it's one player's fault, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
it was his fault.
Drake London, unfortunately, had a really untimely fumble on a comeback drive that was going to put them in field goal range when they're down 3, and we're still going to have a shot at the end zone. But he had a great day up until then.
He did.
And even then, he caught the third down pass and was going to put him.
He had 7 targets and 70 yards. Like that's not anything to sneeze at.
No, Drake London's a very good wide receiver. Desmond Ridder obviously trusts him. Good things. I like it. It's just that fumble was. It's just worth mentioning because it sucked.
So Desmond Ridder put up 97 total passing yards, which is that's not a lot.
Not great.
Of those 97, 70 were accounted for by Drake London. So he obviously is getting a vast majority of the looks.
Yes.
If they continue to roll with Desmond Ridder, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and throw Drake London on there.
He targets the best wide receiver on the team. That's like
imagine what he would do if they had the best tight end on the team.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of weird.
Seriously, it's almost like he'd have 2 great people to throw to. Oh, wow.
He probably would throw for more, right?
Who would throw to the 2 first-round draft picks for the last 2 years?
How do I keep my job? Throw it to the best player that can catch the ball.
That's crazy.
Hey, just a hint, quarterbacks, if they draft someone in the first round that catches balls, you should throw them the ball. Like, that seems like a good plan.
No. That's too much.
Anyway, and then on this, let's let Eli get a little horn tootin' going on over here on the last one above 50%.
For Zay Jones. So Zay Jones had the week of all weeks. If you started Zay Jones, you are probably moving on to the semis because he had 8 targets, 6 catches, 109 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 1, 2, 3, the triple header. He has been doing this the last few weeks. Really has a good chemistry with Trevor Lawrence out there. I mean, last week he had 12 targets, that's why we brought him up. He had even the week we had a down week had 7 targets. And then week 12 he had 14 targets and had scored a lot of points. So I stay in the Flames. He's only 55% rostered right now, even as of today, which is just ludicrous. I know the name's not sexy. I know the player wasn't sexy before the beginning of the year, but you don't win fantasy playoffs without starting ugly. So
who cares?
Put him in. He's facing the New York Jets. That is a better defense, but I would stay in the Flames.
He is probably the dude, the way that we talked about Robbie Anderson a couple years ago when he won a lot of people some playoffs. Yeah. I think Zay Jones is that dude.
Yep.
He's going to win some dudes some playoffs.
And the thing about them playing the Jets is that Sauce should not be on him. He will likely be on Christian Kirk for most of the game, which would mean Zay Jones is not going to get smothered as much as... and also is kind of a good point.
I did want to bring up one more name, and this is more dynasty related, and then we can move on. I'll make it really quick. Rashid Shaheed? Yes, Rashid Shaheed.
For the Saints?
Yeah, for the Saints. Yep. He's a rookie, really a big speedster. Last couple weeks, he's really hit on some big plays, but his snap percentages are matching Chris Olave. Really looking like he is kind of the 1B to the 1A of Chris Olave out there. So really pay attention to him. If he's out there in Dynasty, I don't think he's really viable right now unless you really want that big play, because that's what he really specializes in. You can put him in your flex for explosive, but really good Dynasty kind of look at or DFS play. So
and he's a rookie too. I mean, he was a guy who he went to Weber State. Like, I don't even know if Weber State's a D1 college. I think.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you where that is on the map.
And it's actually right up the road from where my parents live in Utah.
Oh, it's in Utah.
Yeah, it's in
there
Utah.
you go. All right.
So I know where it is on a map.
There you go. You got it covered.
I think they're a D1 school.
Okay.
And he was. I don't know if he was drafted this year or if he was somebody who they signed and he was undrafted, but
I do not know.
He looks pretty good, and I think the Saints are a little desperate with the fact that Michael Thomas is not reliable, and they need more than Juwan Johnson.
I would imagine that. So the snap percentages, I actually want to say, I don't know if Chris Olave is dealing with anything, but he only had 49% of the snaps, and is it Rashid or Rashid
Shaheed?
It's Rashid Shaheed.
I'm just going to call him Rashid.
Yep.
Had 71% of the snaps
Yes.
over Chris Olave this last week, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if Olave is the only thing, but that just highlights that he's really taken a bigger role, so really keep an eye on him, especially for dynasty.
He's almost inch shorter and 9 pounds less, but he's pretty similar in build to Chris Olave. Like, they have very similar speed. It's two comparable guys. He can fly, and they kind of look like they can pop either one in, and that'll be a good option for them.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. We're ready to move on to some streamers. This is actually super important this week because of how the injuries actually we have. Like,
super.
This is not even kidding. Like, Jalen Hurts, all this stuff. We really, these can really change or help somebody win a championship. So.
I think we should start with defense because the defense we can gloss over, and then I think we should hit the tight ends and finish off with the QBs because I think the QBs have a little bit more of a heavy impact.
I hate what I put down.
I was say I don't like your QB.
I don't like yours either.
I didn't like put it down, but there was a lot of other options.
We'll let you work on that. So,
okay.
Looking at defenses, I had Dallas versus Philly. If
Jalen Hurts while he's down, which is smart. Yeah.
But Gardner Minshew, like, you're great, mustache man. But a couple years ago, he kind of fizzled into nothingness. I mean, he went from being the dude who was running the Jaguars and taking them by storm to not really doing anything, and the Dallas defense has just looked on fire, except for against the Jaguars, ironically enough.
They've been good. If you ignore that last weird game, that was kind of crazy.
I mean, they have great players. I think that's a great matchup for them. It's also a division matchup, so there's a little bit of hatred going between the two teams. I would pick Dallas over Philly. I think they're going to eat them alive.
Yeah, I really like that pick. Whenever you can get Dallas's D, I do think they're a good play just in general, but also against the backup quarterback should be good eating for Micah Parsons and the boys. I've got actually the Cincinnati Bengals versus the New England Patriots here, picking on a very frustrated and struggling Mac Jones. And a team that's had a lot of wide receiver injuries as well. With a team that is about as hot as teams can get currently in December and was last year as well, so it doesn't feel like a fluke at all. I feel like the Cincinnati defense steps up and Joe Burrow steps up in December. New England is sort of floundering at the moment, so I would highly recommend starting Cincy over New England, and you can do that in most leagues. They're only 29% owned, so go grab them.
Where's Bailey Zapp?
Yeah, great question.
Is Mac Jones because Mac Jones has just frankly not been great this year. I know he's been injured and everything, but you kind of got to wonder what Bill Belichick is thinking.
The other thing in defense of Mac Jones is it Mac Jones or is it the fact that we don't have a real offensive coordinator?
Well, they don't have a real they have Matt Patricia, which is not a real offensive coordinator, but also their receiving core is kind of weird.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of weird, so
sure.
Maybe get them some help.
All right, Eli.
I just run through my quick. This one is a little bit more scary now that the last few weeks Houston's really put up some points, even on some good defenses. But I'm going to stick with it. They're at Tennessee, so they're at home. But Tennessee versus Houston, they have a dual quarterback system. They have two of their wide receivers out. Yeah, their star running back out. Like, everything would make sense that they would be it would be a good play. But they have been playing good the last 2 weeks, despite what we've been thinking.
Wild card.
So I would still play them based off of who they're playing with.
I will also say this: they're one of the worst, if not the worst, defense against the run. And they are going to be running into Derrick Henry, who also will grind down that clock
pretty quickly.
So I like this start a lot.
Henry's going to eat this week. Oh yeah. That hits it for the defenses. Moving into the tight ends, I'm going to rub Ethan's face in this a little bit because I gave you the chance a couple weeks ago.
You did. You recommended that I should put this guy's name out there, and I was like, I don't know, he hasn't done enough yet. And boy, was that not right.
That is going to be Juwan Johnson.
Because he has been great. And actually, I'm not going to lie, when you were gone, I put him up as my tight end streamer last week.
You sneaky.
Because
you sure did.
I did. I totally did. Because he has been really good.
At least you had the decency to give it back to me this weekend. I think you filled it in for me on the roster. So thank you.
I knew you want him.
Jawan Johnson is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he finds the end zone when he can. He missed a few weeks, but he had 2 touchdowns last week, and the 2 games prior to the bye week didn't really have any. He was injured one week, and then he had 0 points one week where he had 47% of snaps, just like I think, which is kind of a fluke. And then all 3 weeks preceding that, he had a touchdown. Somebody who clearly Andy Dalton is looking for in the end zone. He definitely has some ball handling skills. He definitely has hands where when it's put up to a contested catch, he's going to get it. It also absolutely doesn't hurt that they're playing Cleveland next week, whose defense is not great against tight ends.
Yep.
So
and Clowney was out last week. Let's see if I don't know if he's coming back this week or not.
And then also he's the number 7 ranked tight end. So how are you not going to have the number 7 ranked tight end? There's definitely more than 7 people in your league. So.
Yeah, both your guys' tight ends should be rostered in every league, and they're in the 20%.
Yeah, I'll just go through mine. I talked about him last week. I'm just going to double up on him. He came through. He had 10 points in fantasy, and for tight ends, that is.
I actually played him.
That gets the job done at least, and you have a chance at a touchdown, especially with the lack of receiving options they have right now. But Chig. I'm not going to pronounce his last name.
Chig Ozium
Okonapko. I'm going to call him Chig. He's currently 29% owned. He's facing Houston, which we just talked about. I would maybe pivot if Tannehill isn't playing like we talked about, just for the fact that you can only throw it 4 times. It's not a lot of PPR volume there. But if he is playing, I think you just load up Chig. He's had back to 3 weeks over 10 points. In fantasy, so consistent.
It's great for a tight end, and any caliber, let alone one that's only owned in 29% of leagues. So,
and he's actually starting to beat out. I mean, I think this is noteworthy in itself. He's starting to beat out Austin Hooper for the starting job. It's been very subtle. There's been a couple weeks where he's outsnapped him, but right now they're splitting it. But he's starting to take a majority of those snaps. I think
and they have so few wide receivers that are healthy that they're running 2 tight end sets all the time too. So even though he's not the starter over Austin Hooper or whatever for more snaps, he's still on the field a lot.
And he's from Maryland. You can't be from a better state. So just start this guy. Come on.
And then for my tight end pickup, it's kind of an interesting one, I think. Daniel Bellinger, the rookie that was very hyped, kind of coming into this season. And this is mostly because he has just an amazing matchup. Minnesota's defense, if you haven't noticed, has been absolutely terrible, specifically against the tight end position. And so, like I said, yes, you're playing the person that you're playing, but you're also playing against somebody too. So Bellinger has had a good amount of volume. He's had 4 or 5 targets the last few weeks here. I expect that to continue. And if you are in a pinch and need to grab someone for a tight end stream, pick on bad defenses.
Also, his smile is just look at this photo. He just looks so happy. How can you not like that guy?
Just a great guy.
He looks so happy.
I'd love to get a beer with him sometime.
Absolutely. I also think that the Daniel Jones is having to find targets, and a guy who actually can catch the ball and do a pretty decent job of it. I think it's somebody who you can't really overlook with the. Do we call them a juggernaut anymore? They're not a juggernaut anymore. The Giants, they're kind of going down.
Yeah. They won some Super Bowls back when Eli Manning was relevant, and now
great name.
We haven't heard anything from him.
He always looks confused, even on broadcast. He always looks confused. Okay, so the part that we've kind of been alluding to and waiting for, I'd say that this one definitely has the most weight because there are so many injuries. I want to hear Eli's first.
So I originally was going with Russell Wilson. I know it sounds gross, but anybody below 50%, there's not a lot of options out there right now. We got Tannehill that's below 50%. He's hurt. We got Matt Ryan playing the Chargers, who've been killing people on sacks. I'm not.
Yeah. Matt Ryan under pressure is not
good. Typically, you could look at. There was a good quarterback, like even who's playing the 49ers this week? I was looking at.
Washington, Taylor Heineke.
Yeah, I was looking at Taylor Heineke, but they playing San Francisco. You can't play anybody against San Francisco at all.
No.
I would go with for mine is Ryan Tannehill if he's available and he's healthy. The other one that I was actually considering, and I hate myself for it, but he's below 50%. had a good week last week, and he is the despised of all my nature. But
I felt your
for fantasy
your skin crawl when you said that.
So there's a difference between adding fantasy value to your wide receivers and being a good NFL quarterback, and then actually producing in fantasy. And so if you're absolutely desperate and Ryan Tannehill doesn't play, Zach Wilson has a good matchup against Jacksonville on Thursday, and they should be a high-scoring game.
I can't believe these words
I
coming out of your mouth.
I can't believe you said that without gagging.
Jacksonville will score a lot of points based on their offense and how well Trevor Lawrence has been playing. And so it'll be garbage time, but you could actually get some points out of Zach Wilson this week.
All right, we won't put Eli through any more misery.
Please. That took everything out of me. I got to take a nap.
I can feel it.
It's okay.
It's okay.
No,
it's okay, buddy.
I think it's a good situation for him to be.
At least, like, in garbage time, with how high that score in that game is going to be, I think it'll be decent. So
I kind of cheated for mine because I definitely think he's owned. At least when I looked up him and I put him on here, he was under 50%, but I definitely think he's owned and over 50%. That's Jared Goff. And the real reason why I put him up there is because he's playing the Panthers. The Panthers really have no idea what they're doing. Their defense is lost, and Jared Goff has really just been taking advantage of these bad defenses who don't really have a game plan for him. And when he's on, and he just goes crazy. So
got a lot of good weapons.
Yeah, I really think there's no reason if Jared Goff is available, which it might be like 55, maybe even 60.
Actually, saw 73% of leagues.
Oh man, dude, my stuff is off. I'm seeing 49%.
That's okay. So Jared Goff, if he is available, for sure. But I'm going to give you one that is not going to come with hate and vitriol coming out of my mouth, and it's not going to come with he's probably not available anyway in your league here.
So the only real one.
Is someone who has put up over 20 points the last 2 weeks in his only 2 starts, who is throwing to an excellent Pro Bowl tight end, has an amazing run game, a great offensive line, has a solid wide receiver core, even though the number 1 wide receiver is currently out. And I am talking about Brock Purdy. Yes. Mr. Irrelevant. I know. It seems crazy, but Kyle Shanahan's system is very quarterback friendly. It is a plug-and-play system. Brock Purdy has done a great job stepping in.
He looks Purdy.
And Washington is not a team that I am particularly afraid of. As far as starting Brock Purdy into this, Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle are going to eat, along with Christian McCaffrey, who is, I don't know if you guys know this, but he's pretty good.
He eats every week.
And all Brock Purdy really has to be able to do is throw to a wide open George Kittle over the middle after a play action, or dump it off to Christian McCaffrey on a screen, and he's going to get all those fantasy points. He's going to gobble those things up. So start Brock Purdy. You're welcome.
No, I think it's
100% agree.
great. I think it's a good call just based off the offense. Washington's defense is pretty decent though, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I would start Brock Purdy, just based off of the weapons and the system he's running.
Cool. I think he's honestly the only. He's the only legitimate one that we have on here.
I mean, it is particularly tough at the moment to find quarterbacks that you really feel like
it's really bad. Bad matchups this week for the streamer specifically.
It's also the fact that I just don't like Zach Wilson. Because I saw Zach Wilson on there, and despite the fact that he did last week, I just couldn't put him on here.
If Mike White ends up being healthy,
it's on Thursday night. There's no way.
Yeah, there's no way he's gonna be healthy, man.
Oh, it's on Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Ignore what I just said. But if he does happen to be healthy,
I would have started Mike White this last week and this week if he was healthy. But
unfortunately, they just couldn't find that doctor to clear him.
Yeah, no doubt. He's got to have his ribs. Like, don't be selfish, dude.
Gosh,
he was
what a jerk.
He was limited in practice today.
But
it was only for walkthroughs.
I wouldn't count on it.
We will know more once the Jets conduct an actual practice.
Which will be
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
So Tuesday night, look for Mike White, because I do think that he would be a great one if he does happen to start. But anyway, moving on.
Yep.
We've got one thing left to do, and that is the good, the bad, and the ugly. So who wants to kick us off, and where are we starting today?
So let's start off with bad this week, and then let's finish with ugly, because I think ugly is funny.
Okay, sure. We start in the middle.
Mine will probably be pretty quick. I just I'm going to talk about a few of the things that we saw.
It has the most text on there out of anybody.
I know. Not only one of them. Like, it's just the middle one. So, I'll jump through mine. So I just wanted to point out, especially this last week of the games, it was just kind of crazy to see all these really high top seeds in both the AFC and NFC and come really close to losing, if not actually losing. So we're talking about Kansas City this week, went into overtime with Houston, which they were a heavy favorite for that. Nobody thought they had a chance, and Houston put in overtime. Kansas City did eventually win. A very, very close game to a top seed in the AFC to a team that's going to get the number 1 pick. That's not very, you don't see that very often. Dallas, who's another top seed in the NFC, lost to the Jaguars, which Jaguars are a good solid team.
Still in the hunt too.
But Dallas has blown out the Vikings. They've blown out some really good teams here recently, and they showed to be a really strong contender, but they've showed a lot of weakness this last week to the Jaguars. Kind of crazy to see there.
Don't worry, I'm going to talk about that.
Okay, sounds good. I'll let you take it from there. But
don't worry.
The Eagles also almost lost to the Bears. I mean, they did eventually pull away at the very end, but it was very close throughout that whole game. And obviously, they suffered even a catastrophic injury to Jalen Hurts for the next couple of weeks as well. And then the Ravens, although, again, they didn't have their starting quarterback, did lose to the Browns. So just really, I think specifically this week, the top teams show that there are the top teams, but there's weaknesses up there. So there could be some upsets in the playoffs based off of some things that we saw this week. And just don't put down chalk when you get to the playoff time, because stuff like this happens all the time in the NFL. I just want to point that out. I mean, just show the bad that there are some chinks in the armor in those top seeds.
For sure.
I literally don't think you could put it any better, because I think a lot of people are expecting that this is going to be a pretty cut and dry playoff season.
Yeah.
And I kind of think we're all on the same page where it's going to be weird.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of really weird stuff that's going to go on. We might see a team that we didn't expect to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really weird NFL season. That's going to continue into the playoffs. Don't count anything as set in stone. That's for sure. That's the beauty of the NFL.
Don't count your chickens before the hatch.
And it's also true for your fantasy playoffs as well. Don't just assume if you're projected to lose by 20 or whatever,
so you are out. Already lost because Jalen Hurts is hurt. So
you're going to start Brock Purdy and you're going to love it. I mean, it's not worry about anything.
I started Zach Wilson and I win. Like, I don't even know what I'll do. I don't know if I should celebrate or like
go have a
put myself in a hole, or I don't know what's going to happen. All right, who else wants to go?
Okay. Do you want to do yours, or do you want me to do mine?
I'll go if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
So I just want to talk about Jameson Williams. This is really under my bad, not because Jameson Williams himself is bad, but just because he's been kind of buried on the depth chart. Hasn't really seen much play time. Really has, I believe, had 2 targets so far out of his first 3 games, which is really unexpected for a first-round pick, and quite frankly, the most highly touted wide receiver prospect going into this draft class. I don't know what exactly is going on, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of Jameson Williams, and I'm really hoping to see more of him. But I don't think you can count on him at all for your fantasy playoffs. And on top of that, for Dynasty and everything else, it's like you're starting to kind of wonder what's happening. And DJ Chark has played very well. Monte Brown still there. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown doing very well, as always. But it does seem strange that they're not in some way, somehow getting Jameson involved. So,
I think they're keeping him on ice personally.
Get healthy.
Yeah, I think they already know that they're not going to be rolling into the playoffs this year, and even if they do,
they're 7-7 now.
Even if they do, I don't think that they're really expecting to go very far. They might be the team that gets that upset, kind of like the Giants did that one year. However, maybe not rushing this guy back. He's a rookie. His first game, he didn't see as many snaps. Kind of like what you talk about.
I hope so. I hope you're right, but
I wouldn't worry.
As a dynasty owner, it's a little concerning. It's a little weird to me that we have not seen him yet. When it's like,
I just think that
I wouldn't hit the panic button yet.
Yeah, I think they're in a good groove. I think they put a lot of wins together with the squad they have out there, so I think they're going to use them.
Probably very hesitant to change that up. That's a good point.
Their team cohesion is wild. Yeah. If playoffs were ranked based on team cohesion, Dan Campbell would be up there because he has turned a trash team into good. Like, he's done good things with good draft picks. So,
for sure.
I don't think that they're freaking out. I think as a dynasty owner for him, I would let it chill. I think it's okay.
Somebody offers you a late first-round draft pick for Jameson Williams. Do you take it, dynasty?
I'm hyped on some of the players this year. I'm going to say no.
Would I take a?
Oh, would I take the first round draft?
Yeah.
Oh, I would take a first round draft pick. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'd hang on to Jameson.
Yeah. I would take it.
But I would hang on to Jameson too. But I do think it's closer than I ever thought it was going to be.
I'm high on some players this year, kind of like how you were. So we'll see if that pans out.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want your guys' input on this one. I figured this would be a fun table talk.
Yeah.
I want to talk about 2 quarterbacks that you love to hate.
Okay.
The first one is going to be Tom Brady.
And I actually love Tom Brady.
I love Tom Brady, but I also love to hate on him.
Fair enough. He has had a rough year. 4 turnovers in his last game.
Well, he had 2 fumbles that he lost in his last game. Like, Tom Brady's starting to do something that you don't really see him do very often, and that is fumble the ball and lose the. Normally, he's a scrappy little guy. He's kind of starting to go downhill. We had divorced Tom Brady come back after, and it was yeah, he's going to rally, and now it's kind of just
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. A part of me does almost a little bit want to attribute that to say, okay, but that's the Bengals in December, which it's proven over the last couple of years that the Bengals in December are very hard to beat,
but
for whatever reason.
But
4 turnovers is unacceptable for Tom Brady. I get it.
New Orleans, the fact that he had 54 passes and completed 36 of them, he has negative rushing yards against New Orleans. The guy is not. He's never been a super mobile guy, but he's definitely now losing yards when he tries to rush.
Yeah, well, it's all those O'Neills too. But yeah, don't get me wrong. Tom Brady this year, all year long, has not been the Tom Brady of old. His team is on the verge of missing the playoffs. They have a losing record currently at the moment.
But they're still number 1 in their division.
Yeah.
They are still number 1 in their division. Once again, on the verge of missing the playoffs with a losing record. So we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. Here's what I'll say: is Tom Brady isn't Tom Brady because he wins games during the regular season. Tom Brady is Tom Brady because he wins games during the postseason. If he goes off, no one will care.
No.
But it's been ugly. It's not been what we're used to.
Most
for
losses
sure.
he's ever had.
He's been bad.
Most losses he's ever had in his career.
Yeah, in a single season.
No, I'm with you. He's been very bad. I'm curious to see if he's capable of flipping the switch one last time for a run.
In the playoffs? Oh God, I hope so. That'd be so. It wouldn't be funny to see him get his 8th ring this year. It'd be hilarious.
Wouldn't it be crazy to watch him limp into the playoffs with a losing record
and then just do what Eli
did?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's happened before.
They can't run the.
Kurt Warner did it. They lost in the Super Bowl, but they did it.
Talked about it before, but they can't run the football, which is one of their biggest issues. Is that they're the highest pass percentage team in the league, and if you have a 45-year-old quarterback that's throwing the ball 45 times a game,
not a great combo.
Not a great combination. And so, if that's the case, and you can't run the ball in the playoffs, and their defense is okay at best.
Been hurt.
They've been getting more healthy, but at the same time, if you're one-dimensional in the playoffs, and you got a quarterback that can't move, and your offensive line is worse this year, this is what's going to come of it. And this is if that's going to continue in the playoffs, they're going to be out first round.
Unless Tom Brady can rise above the ashes.
Unless Tom Brady can be the offensive line.
But you're 100% right on the rush game. It's putting so much more on him. We have Cheeseburger Lenny and Rachaad White, who are just not really.
Well, and the offensive line lost. They lost their guard.
Yes.
Their center and I believe a tackle, or did they lose 2 guards?
Yes. 2 guards.
Yeah.
2 guards and a center.
Yeah. It was just So I just don't think. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to change.
My other one, real quick, just love to hate, Deshaun Watson, a guy who we've been talking about for a while, and we've really been man, is he going to come back? Is he going to be worth the almost $200 million that they threw at him? Or is he? Well, apparently he's not.
I'm just glad to know that the Broncos aren't the only financially inept organization in the NFL at the moment, and that the Browns have found a way to be worse.
Well, it's the Browns. It's not like they find it. It's just it's there.
It's in the DNA.
It's just there. Yeah. The fact that that little elf is he's cursed their team.
No, and I don't know what's going on with Deshaun Watson, and maybe he can come back and be fine. But
I don't want him to do good. But he also did play football for 18 months.
Yeah, he did not play
Did
all
he
last year.
read coverages and throw? I don't know.
It's not like he wasn't. He was practicing. It's not like he wasn't.
No,
there.
he wasn't. He couldn't be part of the team until I think a couple weeks before the.
Well, I'm saying last year because he didn't play all of last year.
But he was part of the team. But he was just standing on the sidelines, not doing anything. He wasn't even really practicing because he didn't want to be part of the team. So I think that he has looked terrible, but I think it's too early to judge based off of just being back a couple games.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how he does going into next year. That's when I think he can really make a decision. But yeah, he's looked terrible.
Cool.
All around it.
Mine went a little longer than expected, so I'll make my good short.
Okay.
And that is the Jaguars' Doug Peterson ? Doug Peterson's kind of like, he's the wild card, man. He was the dude who took the Eagles to the Super Bowl when they got, nobody thought that was going to happen. Philly special, and now he's chilling with the Jaguars, and they are doing some weird stuff. They're beating teams that they definitely shouldn't beat. They're losing to teams that they definitely shouldn't lose to. Trevor Lawrence looks the way that they expected him to last year for some reason. They have wide receivers that they paid a lot of money that everybody was like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah.
And apparently panned out really well. Doug Peterson is the king of weird. I mean, he just does weird things to a football team.
Saved Evan Ingram's career.
100%.
Saved Trevor Lawrence's career. Saved Christian Kirk.
Zay Jones' career.
Zay Jones
was drafted by the Buffalo Bills, and he played for the Raiders.
Yeah,
and then he just now having this huge explosion.
Doug Peterson is, and he comes from the Andy Reid tree.
He does. And
he's one of the few that I think really has captured some of that Andy Reid magic. He can convert players into better players.
Yeah.
Just by through scheming.
He must put his quarterbacks in great positions because he had Nick Folk lead him to the Super Bowl and win it, and now he's having a resurgence with Trevor Lawrence's career. He must know what he's doing.
The whole team really likes him.
Yeah.
And that's he came in, and I gotta say, it's probably a great, refreshing change of pace from having Urban Meyer last year and him just being a toxic jerk in the entire locker room to having a dude that the players genuinely care about and they like.
One of the biggest turnarounds in sports, quite frankly, and if Trevor Lawrence goes on to be what he has been this year, for the next decade for the Jaguars, and Doug Peterson does what he did this year for the next decade for the Jaguars.
Everything they said about Trevor Lawrence is right.
They could really have a dynasty, and it's just starting out here. Because Trevor Lawrence is only going to get better. Doug Peterson only going to start getting more and more personnel to fit his schemes and to do things better.
Spending some of that cap space,
the Jaguars are a team over the next few years to watch.
Tie back to fantasy. Trevor Lawrence the last 4 weeks, 29 points, 18 points, 39 points, 35 points, in 6 touchdown leagues for fantasy football. So he has been really good and probably winning people some games.
And a lot of people were worried about him after last year, looking at him saying,
I traded him. But I got
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts, but that didn't work out so well right now. But.
For now. But it did earlier. It's okay. Yeah, he might play. Eli and Ethan, yours are...
I'll just jump I'll keep it pretty short. I just want to do a shout out really to the Lions, just the fact that they started 1-6 and are now we just talked about they're in the playoff hunt. They're 7-7 now. They're strung together. They're 7-1 in the last 8. So that is a streak for sure. Jared Goff, dare I say, looks like a competent quarterback and looks good.
Which is crazy.
Compared to where he came from. But the weapons we talked about earlier. I mean, you mentioned Jameson Williams not playing. I think the reason Jameson Williams not playing is because their weapons right now have been so good and been playing so well. So I think that's more on the weapons they currently have compared to letting Jameson Williams come along and just add value where he can. But I really think that the Lions, if they continue to play well, really have a chance to make the playoffs. And we'll see what happens when they get in the playoffs. Anything can happen, but I just a shout out to them with the turnaround. It's been a really rough time for the Lions the last 15, 20 years or so. So
ever.
So really cool to see, and really the coach is easy to root for, and I think
you gotta like Dan Campbell, man.
Yeah,
it's
Dan
hard
Campbell's,
not to like Dan Campbell.
Yeah, one of the guys you run through a brick wall for. So
he's an absolutely fun, great to watch, and the Lions. It's been a great story that we've kind of been talking about for years.
They're young. Yeah. So even Jared Goff, I mean, he's not old for a quarterback, and so he's on a longer term deal. Yeah. They have Hutchinson they just drafted. James Williams is coming back, and I think they're going to be good for.
Jeffrey Okuda's still on a rookie contract.
Swift's still young. I mean, I think they'll be good coming in next year too. So
yeah, for sure. I want to stay in the division actually, and I'm going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings because last week I said that the Vikings seemed to fall apart in big games and in big moments and under 10 situations.
Which they did.
And to my credit, they started off this game completely falling apart. But how they came back has made me a bit more of a believer in the fact that the Vikings might have an actual chance.
Dude, not that to that extent.
That magic is going to run out eventually.
This is the second time they've done it, though.
Yeah.
Like
33 points, the largest regular season comeback in NFL history.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's more, in my opinion, I think it's more impressive when they came back from the Bills, just for the fact of how good that team
100%
was.
agree.
And
Sure.
that's a bigger comeback in NFL history, obviously, but
yeah,
it just shows that they've done this twice. It's not a fluke.
Yeah, no, their defense has been, quite
Not
frankly,
great.
atrocious.
He's
Is
the
the word that I
comeback
used
king.
earlier,
Yeah.
and I'll stand by that. It has been bad.
Well,
But they have found a way to fight their way through and do what needs to be done to win games, and that's what great teams do. And I'm really excited to watch what Vikings can actually do this postseason, and dare I say, a little hopeful that they do something.
So it'd be very fitting for the Vikings for them to make it to the Super Bowl and then not win, just because it's the typical.
It
Vikings.
really would. It
It'd be
really
hilarious.
would.
But like, really, what would make me laugh is if it was the Bills and the Vikings, because both teams with terrible playoff records and Super Bowl records.
Yes.
One of them's got to win out and get a Super Bowl.
Especially the Bills. They made it 3 years in a row, right?
4
years in a row.
There's 4
Excuse
years
me.
in a row.
And lost 4 years in a row.
Yes, and the Vikings have
Can you
also. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I really something that I would attribute to them finally finding success is that Captain Kirk is finally acting like a captain. You know, he's rallying and he's going in and being like, man, I really gotta pull the team around me and I gotta make this work. He threw for over 400 yards in the second half.
Yeah.
Like, that's absurd.
It's insane.
That is absurd.
And Justin Jefferson, obviously a big contributing factor to that.
Oh my God.
He is so good.
Yeah.
KJ Osborne had a huge game too.
KJ Osborne, someone that worth mentioning, and if he's on your waiver wire, also possibly worth picking up.
We did debate on
he's a landmine. Like, the reason why he had that many fantasy points is because of this game situation. I would not pick up and play KJ Osborne.
Don't pick him up. He's a.
I also said don't pick him up.
I said maybe.
Yeah, I also said don't pick him up. It's too.
Unless
It's
you
too.
want 5 points.
Yeah, it's too hit or miss.
No, he definitely is a risk reward. But
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it was 4. The Bills, it was 88,
4.
89, 90, 91, and I think it was 5?
No way.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I got the years wrong. It was 90, 91, 92, and 93. So it was 4 years in a row where they made it to the Super Bowl and they lost. And they took an L to the Cowboys for 2 of those, the Redskins for 1 and the Giants for the other, which is hilarious.
That division just kicked the crap out
They
of
just
them over
beat
those
us. The
4
Bills
years.
just went back crying to their mama at the end of it.
I think go back to the Vikings. I think that's a really good story. Like, amazing. They've done it twice. Their offense is super explosive, but not having a great defense in the playoffs can really come back and bite pretty quick. So it's gonna be pretty difficult to see them be successful.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm picking them to win at all because they definitely would not be my first choice. But I am excited to see what they can do. They're at least going to be fun.
It's going to be entertaining no matter what because they're definitely going to try to put up some points there. So
speaking of an entertaining team who we all hope loses in the playoffs, except you guys hope the Vikings win, is the Cowboys. So for my ugly, I would like to talk about the Cowboys and the Jaguars this week because frankly, that was probably one of the worst showings for the Cowboys that I've ever seen. They did exactly what you would expect them to do at the end of the season and choked, like they do every year. And it just reminds me that I was feeling a little murky down on the inside, thinking like, man, the Cowboys might be good this year. They might actually make it through the first round of the playoffs, but. This week really set that to ease and reminded me that they're going to do exactly what they do every year.
The hate in your heart got what it needed.
It did. It quenched the fire.
You got that pick 6 fix.
So this time, I talked about a little bit of this last week. Not the actual team, but I completely agree with you. I talked about Dak Prescott in my bad last week and how many turnovers he's had since week 7. So here's his turnover list that I already have it pulled up. He had 0, 1, 2, 0, 2, 1, 2. And that's just interceptions. So he's averaging at like 1 interception per game since week 7. Yeah. And that destroys it. No matter how good your defense is and your offense, like if you continuously turn the ball over at least 1 or 2 times a game, you're going to be in a bad position.
I think one of the biggest things is he really does not play well under pressure. Like when it really comes down to crunch time and he has to win or he has to lose, he looks at it and he's like,
yeah, although that pick was not his fault at the end of that game.
No,
to be
that
fair.
wasn't. But I mean,
other ones had
consistently.
other things like it's a trend that
they're not all.
Yeah.
When a pattern presents itself.
No, absolutely. I just want to point out because there are people who come back at you. But I'm just saying, like that one in particular was not his fault, but he had opportunities to win that game in regular time by making big plays on third downs and closing out drives and taking advantage of the lead that he did not do, which led to them being in a situation where the pick that was not his fault lost them that game.
Dak on Dak.
Dak on Dak.
Dak on Dak.
Perfect.
Both of yours are hilarious, I think.
Do you want to go? Or
Go ahead. I would love to end. That's cool.
Okay. All right. I'll talk about the Patriots game, and we'll just call it the play. I just wanted to talk about the craziest, stupidest way I've ever seen a game end in the history.
I've never seen
Bobby Boucher in the Bourbon Bowl when he literally the play was the exact same thing that he did, where he was like, you looked around for the guy and threw the ball to.
For those that maybe not watch the game or whatever the case is, the scenario is the Patriots are driving right before the end of the game. It's tied up, and they're trying to get into field goal range, but they only have, I believe it was like 10 maybe.
It was like
no, I think they were like out of time.
Yeah, they have 3 seconds left, so they just did a draw with Ramondre Stevenson, and they got about 15 to 20 yards. And really, what they should have done is just gone down and went into overtime, but Ramondre decided to be a clown, I guess, or
I don't know that this is Ramondre's fault. He
started the initial pitch.
He started a pitch to Jacoby Myers.
But Jacoby Myers literally threw
it was a very reasonable pitch.
Yes.
Correct.
And then Jacoby Myers.
But if Ramondre would have made the decision to go down, would have ended the play.
Yes.
And what's the point of in that position? No matter how easy the pitch is, what's the risk reward for pitching the ball and to actually have a potential of fumbling even on that easy pitch, or be able to go to overtime and actually play it out. So I think part of the blame has to fall on Ramondre. He could have ended this whole thing.
I think that 5% of the blame might be on Ramondre Stevenson, and 95% is on Jacoby Myers.
Anyways, we didn't finish talking about it. So Ramondre pitched the ball. He straight away went down. He had 20 yards, but the clock hit zeros. Instead of actually going down and playing for overtime, he pitched the ball to Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers thought the brilliant idea of, oh look, it's our quarterback who's unathletic. I'm gonna toss him the ball across the field behind me, where he gets absolutely sent into a different dimension. Let me phrase that back. A defensive end actually intercepted the ball or the pitch, picked it up, and then the quarterback, who is this unathletic quarterback named Mac Jones, attempted to tackle this big defensive end so they wouldn't score a touchdown, and then ended with his head in the grass almost down to the bottoms of the netherworld after a stiff arm.
It was like watching an adult stiff arm a child.
Yeah, it was. It was very
because he's just so much bigger, and Mac Jones should never be put in that position.
Yeah. I thought it was hilarious.
That was
great.
So the Patriots went to, the worst case scenario is, or not the worst case, we have a potential tie to win or lose to, we'll just throw away the whole game and end it on crazy.
Because no one caught Chandler Jones after he stiff-armed their quarterback into the
ground and thus
took off.
Ended the game. Craziest ending I've seen ever. So.
And Bill Belichick just probably didn't say anything to Josh McDaniels after. He just walked out and just was like, I'm done.
All right, so I got a little rant for you guys here.
Oh, jeez.
I'll never be an NFL player. I'm never going to make it to the league, okay?
Called it, huh?
Yeah, I know. I'm only 30. I might still have a chance.
Giving up your dreams early.
At 5'11", overweight, and out of shape, I don't think I'm going to cut it. That being said, if I were an NFL player, I would not do what Miles Sanders just did. And that is go on Twitter and tell people that you don't care about them when all they do is spend their time caring about you. Okay? Miles, that's dumb. It's a pretty stupid thing to say. These are your fans. These are people that watch you. These are people that start you in the fantasy playoffs and then you put up 1.92 points? 1.92? And then you tell them you don't care about fantasy football? Miles! Miles! Show some respect! We buy your jerseys, man! Or why you live in a mansion? Don't be a dick! Anyway, I'm not mad about it at all that you lost me in my fantasy playoffs, clearly. And I'm not mad about the Twitter response either, if you can't tell.
I think you're more mad about the Twitter response than the fantasy playoffs.
You're like, honestly, what is that, man? Like, it's far, it happens. I wasn't good. I didn't tweet at you because you got me 1.92, which is a terrible game for you. You should just be upset it's a terrible statistical game because it's your job to put up good statistical games. But, all that ignored, nobody said anything. I didn't say anything to you. Like, I don't care about your fantasy football playoff. Yeah? Well, then I don't care about you! Anyway.
Okay, so that being said, are you done drafting Miles Sanders
for forever?
For forever. Is this a he is blocked from your fantasy
No,
roster?
I'm not going to do that. If he's a good value, I will. But
you seem pretty upset there.
I'm not going to buy your stupid jersey. Let me tell you that much. Your Malibu mansion ain't getting any bigger thanks to me, Miles Sanders. Like, come on, man. Come on.
You know what his reply to everybody retweeting him is? I am who I am.
Who you are is a dick! These people spend their lives watching you! It's why you're famous! You wouldn't be famous without these people! You dum-dum!
You may not have tweeted at him, but I'm sure there was plenty other people that tweeted at him and were saying not great.
Yeah, the fantasy community also don't be idiots as well, but still, Miles.
Don't care about y'all ticket or fantasy and never will.
Yeah, not cool, man.
Booby Miles 26.
Booby Miles.
That's his Twitter handle.
Nice. That's a good movie reference, Miles. Anyway, no. So I think we'll end on that.
That scary note.
That scary note. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of the Fantasy Playcallers.
I promise Ethan will not yell at you next week.
Yeah, I will. Maybe. We'll see.
I might.
No, we love it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. It allows us to continue to record. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. Good luck in your fantasy playoffs this week and next week. If you are still in, if you're in the losers bracket, that's okay too. Still start your team. Do the things you need to do for your league. And hit up your friends and congratulate them for being in because you're that type of person. You're not like Miles Sanders. You're a much nicer person.
Miles Sanders, I really don't care. So, it is what it is, man. I'm sure he just got tired of people atting him and DMing him and being like, hey, Miles Sanders, you cost me $50 in my fantasy. Who cares?
Anyway, like and subscribe below, and may your free agency bed be $1 above.
Always one.
Always one.
$1 above.
Peace.
Take care, guys.